Hi guys. The author we're gonna be talking about today is Ernest Hemingway. But first, we're gonna give you a general bird's eye view of what his life was, and then the theory and the background that supported his career as a writer. The early life and career. Ernest Hemingway was born on July 21 in 1899 in Cicero, that nowadays is Illinois. His his parents, I say, Clarence and Grace Hemingway, raised their son in this conservative suburb of Chicago, but the family also spent a great deal of time in northern Michigan, where they had a cabin. It was there that the future sportsman learned to hunt, fish, and appreciate the outdoors. In high school, Hemingway worked on his school newspaper, writing primarily about sports. Immediately after graduation, the budding journalist went over for the Kansas City Star, gaining experience that would later influence his distinctively stripped-down prose style. Remember that his style was very simple. I mean, it was not the kind of style that had many complicated structure, but it was very simple, and we're gonna see it later on in the theory. But according to this, he once said on the start, the newspaper that he was working in, on the start you were forced to learn to write a simple declarative sentence. This is useful to anyone. Newspaper work will not harm a young writer and could help him if he gets out of in time. This was this early life and career, but there was a fact that he suffered, and it was the thing that he had to go to the World War I, and this is which is called the military experience that he had. In 1918, Hemingway went overseas to serve in World War I as an ambulance driver in the Italian army. For his service, he was awarded the Italian Silver Medal of Bravery, but soon sustained injuries that landed him in a hospital in Milan. There he met a nurse named Agnes von Korowski, who soon accepted his proposal of marriage, but later left him for another man. This devastated the young writer, but provided fodder for his works, a very short story, and more famously, Farewell to Arms. This was a very interesting book that he wrote. Um, and what else? Still nursing his injury and recovering from the brutalities of war at the young age of 20, he returned to the United States and spent time in northern Michigan before taking a job at the Toronto Star. It was in Chicago that Hemingway met Haley Rickerson, the woman who would become his first wife. The couple married and quickly moved to Paris, where Hemingway worked as a foreign correspondent for the Star. In Paris, they're gonna live very important experiences that raised him to become a good writer. This little part in his life is called Life in Europe. In Paris, Hemingway soon became a key part of what Gertrude Stein was a very close friend of him, would famously call the Lost Generation. Well, with Stein as his mentor, first, the Lost Generation is something that I'm going to explain a little bit later. But a bird's eye view. The Lost Generation, with Stein as his mentor, Hemingway made the acquaintance of many of the great writers and artists of his generation, such as Scott Fitzgerald, Ezra Pound, Pablo Picasso, and James Joyce. In 1923, Hemingway and Haley had a son, John Haley Nicanor Hemingway. But this time the writer had also begun frequenting the famous festival of San Fermin in Pamplona, Spain. Remember that he was passionate about this kind of things like hunting and that kind of stuff. In 1925, the couple joined a group of British and American expatriates took a trip to the festival that would later provide the basis of Hemingway's first novel, The Sun Also Rises. The novel is widely considered Hemingway's greatest work, artfully examining the post-war disillusionment of his generation. Soon after the publication of The Sun Also Rises, Hemingway and Hallie divorced, due in part of his affair with a woman named Pauline Prefer, who would become Hemingway's second wife shortly after his divorce from Hallie was finalized. The author continued to work on this book of short stories, Men Without Women. The critical acclaim. Soon, Pauline became pregnant and the couple decided to move back to America. After the birth of their son Patrick Hemingway in 1989, they settled in Key West, Florida, but summer in Wyoming. During this time, Hemingway finished his celebrated World War I novel A Farewell to Arms, securing his lasting place in the literary canon. When he wasn't writing, Hemingway spent much of the 30s chasing adventure, big game hunting in Africa, bullfighting in Spain, deep sea fishing in Florida, while reporting on the Spanish Civil War in 1937. Hemingway made a fellow war correspondent named Murdoch Gellhorn and gathered material for his next novel, For Whom the Bell Tolls, which would eventually be nominated for the Pulitzer Prize. Pulitzer Prize, I mean. When the United States entered the World War II in 1941, Hemingway served as a correspondent and was present at several of the war's key moments, including the D-Day landing in Normandy. Toward the end of the war, Hemingway made another war correspondent, Mark Wells, whom he would later marry after divorcing Martha Gellhorn. In 1951, Hemingway wrote The Old Man and the Sea, which would become perhaps his most famous book, finally winning the Pulitzer Prize he had long been denied. Well, this is the final of this life, the personal struggles and suicide. The author continued his forays into Africa and sustained several injuries during his adventures, even survived multiple plane crashes. In 1954, he won the Nobel Prize in Literature. Even at the peak of his literary career, though, the burly Hemingway's body and mind were beginning to betray him. Recovering from various old injuries in Cuba, Hemingway suffered from depression and was treated for numerous conditions such as high blood pressure and liver disease. He wrote a movable feast as memoir of his years in Paris and retired permanently to Idaho. There he continued to battle with the terror in mental and physical health. Early on the morning of July 2, in 1961, Ernest Hemingway committed suicide in his kitchen home.